Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Here we are, and let's get started. 50, chapter 50. Yeah, I know you guys. This is so far off your radar, but we have now moved the yellow line down to chapter 50, and we're going to move pretty quickly through 50.
Oh, you mean before I leave?
Because I want to. It is a promise. I actually have scratched out an outline of the remaining sessions because we're going to end around 200 sessions. Around. I haven't decided yet.
Jacob didn't live 200 years.
No. Well, we were moving into, there it is, chapter 50, right there, 1 through 3. By way of review, in chapter 49, the last section in chapter 49, we were looking at Jacob's three actions. One was he gave a charge to his sons about his burial. He then moved on where after he gave the charge, he drew up his feet into his bed and breathed his last. He actually expired. And we talked about that. And then last week, we finished up that chapter 49 with where it says Jacob was gathered to his people. And we had some comments and discussion on that. So now take yourself to the scene. Your father has just passed. You're there with loved ones around the bed. And that is where we're going into a very sacred and holy moment for the family. And we'll pick up reading in chapter 15, 1 through 3. So would somebody read that for us, please?
Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking a full 40 days, for that was the time required for an embalming. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days.
Okay, thanks, Tatsi. From my perspective, the text is moving quickly. You know, if my makeup as a person, I would want to dwell on verse 1. You know, the moment of seeing the reactions of the other brothers. But the text, I didn't write the text. The writer of the text expresses Joseph's reaction to his father passing and then moves right into Joseph's next step, taking command, taking charge for next steps. And so what we're going to look at this morning is we're going to look at the term grieving this morning, just briefly. We're going to have some table time this morning. These three, I see Joseph is two aspects of this text, two actions, if you will. One is he's what I would call fully engaged. The writer is really very graphic in Joseph's emotions and expressions at this time. He's fully engaged in the grief. He notices says he fell, he wept, he kissed. Those terms there, those verbs. And then right in the second verse, second, third, it follows up, and it says he took the necessary. What I'm doing to summarize it is he took the necessary next steps. The necessary next steps. He yielded himself to the appointed process of the culture, which was this embalming process, and it says he commanded to then, okay, let's move on. So I see a grieving, very graphic and demonstrative grieving over his father, holding the body, kissing the body, but then him just almost in a 180-degree turn, he gets up and he then commands for next steps. So the question is, I was dwelling on that this week. What can we learn from this and discuss? And so I see a juxtaposition here very, very quickly, a grieving and then a commanding. And so when I was trying to put this together in my head, what I came up with is this very simplistic diagram that's going to lead our discussion. That there's two aspects of this grieving process. There's probably, I'm not an authority by any means on grieving, but from the 30,000 foot level, and it'd be interesting to hear what you guys have to say about this. There is a first of all what I'm calling a loss trauma. There's a loss in a grieving process. What stimulates the process, what initiates a process of grieving, is a loss of some sort. It could be, in this case, a loss of a loved one, but it could be a loss of a job. It could be, a loss of some other type of relationship. But that life is filled with loss, and that loss then it then initiates this trauma of this loss. And it can be a true trauma, almost like a blow to the kneecap, or it can be a loss, a traumatic loss over time, like the slow death of a loved one, where we learn to let go as that person is becoming more sick and more frail, and we're watching this life start to fade in front of us. And I think all of us here have had a combination of these types of losses. We've all experienced loss. We've all grieved in this room. So there's that piece. And then the second piece on top is a letting go. And, it's the natural outcome is that we eventually, hopefully, we let go. That is, I think that is what is defined as a natural outcome, and a healthy outcome of loss is that we learn to let go over time to move on in our lives with what's left of our life. I think that is just part of it. So these two ideas of handling this trauma, processing the trauma, and the letting go, and it's seen to work in tandem with each other over time. These two. This represents time, and over time, loss, the trauma, hopefully, it can subside, and the letting go increases over time. Maybe it's once, I think of that scene out of, remember the old movie Top Gun, where Maverick he'd been carrying the dog tags of his close friend Goose, who Maverick took responsibility for Goose's death. It's because of who Maverick was, a Maverick. And but there's a point in the movie. Do you remember the scene where he let that go? What was the scene?
They were on the fantail of the aircraft carrier, and he threw the dog tags overboard.
Yeah, I mean it was really pretty dramatic. Da, 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 and he throws it out, and then he gets the girl, and he moves on. So that's what I think of letting go. He let Goose go, and of course that's that upper box. So my thoughts. Well, before I move into my thoughts here, I found a very cool tool online called Google Trends, and you guys could use this. I wanted to bring this out today, but you can go to Google Trends and you can put in a phrase. In this case, I put in the phrase "how to grieve," right there. How to grieve, and it will search. You can enlarge or narrow the search by geographic region up to the world. This is a world search, and time frame from the last few hours to I've got 5 years in here, 5 years of data, and that data doesn't mean a whole lot to any of us. But what was interesting. And it only gives you significant amount of search through Google. Now, Google has 64% of market share, so it's a significant representation of what what this search term is about. So according to Google Trends, the search term "how to grieve" is most popular in the United States, followed by the United Kingdom. There has also been a slight increase. I did some other things that doesn't show here. In popularity, slight increase since 2004. The term has not been searched at any quantifiable level in the remainder of the world. That's why the remainder of the world is, I don't know if you can see, this is a map. And United States, United Kingdom are the only places where quantifiable data has shown up in regard to this term, how to grieve. I'm curious, why do you think that is? What?
A bit of it, well, there's going to be a bit of a technological bias. Maybe Google's predominantly used in the United States and the United Kingdom. I'm sure it's used elsewhere, but that would offer a certain. Other people aren't searching on it because they're not searching on Google, period.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah, I just thought it was.
Yeah, cultural.
I thought it was really interesting.
Language barrier. Grieve doesn't translate to grieve and other, or Google doesn't operate in other languages.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I've been doing other terms, and you get a world perspective.
So
Yeah.
basically, they don't worry about how to grieve. They do grieve, or maybe
Yeah.
they don't grieve.
Yeah.
I think one of the baseline reasons for that is that the American society is one of the most heterogeneous societies in the world. We're such a melting pot.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of people, this is a simplification, but I think a lot of people in the U.S. are confused about how they're supposed to grieve because they have so many different cultural inputs, and they don't know which way to go.
And they've lost their cultural connections. If they had them, they probably would have a way to grieve that
Right.
they should have brought over with them.
Yeah, these are all good thoughts.
I would wonder if it would have something to do with the value placed on human life. I think here in the States, Britain and stuff, there's a higher value put on life because of our Christian background. And each individual is important and has a part to play, where in these other countries where there's masses of people like China, the individual is not valued very high at all. People are a commodity to be used and discarded.
I think societally you might be right, but I think how to grieve as a family is a very personal thing. I mean, I'm not going to worry about how to grieve over whenever its mom died, will die. I mean, I feel forever, but I'm not going to spend time how to grieve, but I will with my mom or dad. So to your point, you get into China and some of those places, families, they may not have a value of life societally or politically, but within families, everybody has a high value of life. And everybody grieves the loss of a mother or a father or a son or a wife.
So we've had the input. I mean, we could probably talk more about this, but I want to get going. But we've had the idea that what was your idea again? I forget.
Well, it's personal. I mean, it's. I mean, Carl's point's right about the value of life in general, but when it gets personal, everybody,
Yeah.
most everybody that has any kind of normal mental health,
Right.
grieves the loss of a close one.
And then Dave's point is that U.S. I don't know about Great Britain or UK, but the melting pot is that it's so. Other places in the world are much more homogeneous, where there is a much more of a definitive culture of how you grieve. So maybe the question really isn't needed to be asked. I don't know, but the thing of it is what I kept. I thought of some of these things. You guys have actually expressed them a lot clearer than I did. But the fact is, we're asking the question. We're asking, how do we grieve? Therefore, we're seeking information. But it necessitates that maybe we aren't real clear on how to grieve. So that's why we're asking the question.
I'm going to take back a little what I said to Carl. I think he's right on one thing. When we've lost the Christian connection in terms of people don't go to church anymore, they're not part of that. I've had 2 or 3 friends, and I have a friend who had a mother and father, but they weren't involved in church of any kind, or so they didn't have a funeral. And when you didn't have a funeral, they didn't have any kind of
cultural process, it just sort of, they died and they were cremated.
And that's
there was
sad.
It was left hanging.
Yeah.
And the people, all of them said, and they all kind of said, why did we leave this hanging? Well, we didn't really know what to do. Well, still, they were left hanging. There wasn't closure to the thing.
Right.
So,
Well,
you know, yeah.
that kind of ties in with my belief, and I'll state it here in a little bit. But getting back to the drawing here, this little diagram, my observations regarding this subject is that the relationship between loss trauma and letting go is seldom as clean as illustrated here. It's not a linear process by any means. I don't have a way in this particular program to make this all jagged. It's too much work. So I just made it linear, but it's never this clean. And then number two, because of our cultural denial of death. Now this is my opinion. Ernest Becker in his book Denial of Death really has influenced a lot of my thinking. So I'm in that camp. I think as a culture we put off this idea of death. We put off death as long as we possibly can. Then when it happens very close to us or around us, we don't know how to operate. So that's what's influencing number two up here. You know, sooner or later we find ourselves ill-equipped to support others through their grief process. We naturally react by either attempting, this is how we do it by default, we attempt to make the pain go away or fix it. And for Christians we use some Bible verse to fix it. And then, or we remove ourselves from the picture until we feel it's safe to re-engage with that person. We just disappear. And those of you who have had loss, those of you who've lost a loved one, you've probably experienced both of these with either comments or where did my friends go? You know, we all have stories we could tell. So this is my observation. So what I'd like us to do, we just have moved very quickly here, and I'd like for us to talk at our tables and just answer the question among yourselves: what has grief taught you? Everyone in this room has suffered grief. And let's look at grief this morning as a teacher, and what has grief taught you this morning? So we've got about 10 minutes, and then I'll get us back together because I'd really like to hear your thoughts this morning. So, all right, let's do that, and I'll join one of the discussions. So.